I was 8 when I said it, which should have invalidated the statement forever, the way it does on Earth. Children promise marriage to pets, to cartoon characters, to anyone who hands them a sweet at the right moment. No one files paperwork. No one alerts the universe. She took it very seriously. At the time, seriousness looked like her going quiet in that way she did when she was thinking too fast for translation. We were sitting on the edge of the observation dome, legs dangling above a planet that wasn't ours, counting cargo ships because it felt like a reasonable thing to do. I had just lost at a game whose rules changed every round, and she was laughing in a way that made the air vibrate slightly. "I'll marry you," I said, mostly because I was losing and wanted to feel impressive again. She stopped laughing. "Is that a declaration?" she asked. "It's a promise," I said. "I think." She nodded once precise, and touched the band at her wrist. It pulsed. I assumed it was a toy. Later I would learn it was an archive. "Accepted," she said. That was the end of it, or so I thought. Years passed the way they always do when you're not paying attention. The exchange program ended. She went back to wherever she was from. I went back to school, learned that vows required licenses, and forgot that words could travel farther than people. I grew up. I learned to be careful with contracts, less careful with memories. The message arrived on an ordinary day, which felt rude. It began with my full name, which was the first warning sign, and continued with a greeting that translated poorly into English but carried the unmistakable weight of formality. It congratulated me on my continued existence. Then it thanked me for honoring my word. I laughed, out loud, alone. That was my second mistake. By the time I finished reading, my hands were shaking in a way I associated with turbulence and extremely bad ideas. The message explained politely that a vow spoken decades ago had reached maturity, that it had accrued legal mass, that it was now binding under imperial law. I checked the timestamp. I checked the sender. I checked whether I was being pranked by a very advanced group of former classmates. "You were a child," I said to the empty room. The room did not argue, which felt ominous. A second message followed, shorter, personal. "I have come of age," it said. "So has your promise. I expect you to keep it." I sat down very carefully. Somewhere, across more space than I could picture, an empire was waiting. And apparently, so was a girl who never forgot what words were for. I spent 3 days trying to disprove the message, which in retrospect was optimistic of me. I contacted legal consultants, cultural analysts, and one retired xenolinguist who laughed for a full minute before apologizing and asking if I'd kept any other childhood promises he should know about. According to everyone I spoke to, this was either impossible, unprecedented, or above their pay grade, which is a professional way of saying please stop calling asterisk. On the fourth day, a ship arrived. It did not ask for permission. It announced itself, politely but firmly, the way a door announces itself when it is about to become a wall. The station scrambled, protocols bloomed, alarms considered sounding, and then decided this was already embarrassing enough. I was escorted aboard with the gentle urgency reserved for people who might accidentally cause an interstellar incident by tripping. During transit, I learned several new facts. 1. In her civilization, spoken declarations were not ephemeral. They were seeds. 2. Those seeds matured according to intent, not age. 3. Apparently, 8-year-old humans were considered legally reckless but emotionally sincere. That one hurt a little. The ship's interface tried to make conversation. It asked if I was excited. I told it I was experiencing something closer to narrative regret. It logged this as asterisk premarital anxiety and offered tea. When we arrived, the palace did not loom so much as asterisk arrive everywhere at once asterisk. Gravity adjusted. Time felt slightly offended. I was informed that my presence had stabilized 3 political factions simply by being expected. This did not improve my mood. She received me without ceremony, which somehow made it worse. She was not the girl I remembered, and yet she was exactly her. The way she tilted her head when thinking, the pause before she spoke, as if choosing the correct future. Power sat on her the way childhood curiosity once had comfortably. "You came," she said. "I was worried not coming would be considered rude," I replied, "or treason." She smiled. It was not threatening. That also did not help. "You promised," she said gently, as if reminding me I'd left the oven on. "I was 8, I said. "I also promised to become a pilot dinosaur." She considered this. "And did you?" "No." "Then we will need to address selective fulfillment." I laughed because the alternative was screaming. She gestured and the air itself acknowledged the old vow. I felt it then, not romance, not destiny, but wait. A sentence spoken too early, finally catching up. "Our people believe words grow," she said. "Yours believe they fade." "That explains a lot," I muttered. She looked at me, not unkindly. "You may still choose," she said. "But understand this, what you said changed me. It shaped who I became." That was when it stopped being funny. And when I realized this was never about marriage. It was about what survives when we stop paying attention. They gave me a schedule, which was how I knew this was serious. Empires did not improvise. They archived. My day was broken into segments labeled consultation, orientation, and one ominous block simply marked context. I asked what that meant. A counselor told me it was where people usually stopped arguing. The first consultation involved legal scholars who spoke in harmonized layers. They explained that the vow I'd made had not only matured, but begun to interact with imperial stability metrics. Apparently my existence had become a variable. I apologized. They thanked me for my honesty and asked me not to do it again. Context turned out to be worse. She was there, waiting, as if time had been holding its breath until I caught up. We sat across from each other with a distance that felt symbolic and unhelpful. I tried to remember her as a child and failed. She tried to remember me as anything other than the person who had spoken a sentence that changed her life. "Our historians traced the resonance," she said. "Your words anchored a possibility. In a time of uncertainty, my people rallied around it." "I was talking about playground marriage," I said. "The kind that lasts until lunch." "Yes," she replied, "we do not have lunch." That earned a smile from me, despite myself. She showed me projections, futures branching and collapsing, all of them sensitive to whether I honored or rejected the vow. In some, the empire fractured politely. In others, it hardened into something brittle. In a few, it survived by becoming something new. "I don't want to rule," I said. "You would not," she said. "You would witness. Sometimes that is enough." I thought of the boy I'd been, trying to sound brave. I thought of how easily words had left my mouth, how heavy they felt now. "Is there a version of this where I don't break something?" I asked. She considered. "Yes," she said. "But it requires you to stop thinking of the vow as ownership. It was never that." "Then what was it?" She looked at me, really looked, as if measuring how much truth I could carry without dropping it. "It was continuity," she said. "You promised a future. I built one that could receive it." Silence settled. Not awkward, just full. I laughed softly. "I can't believe the galaxy is being held together by my inability to think before speaking." She smiled back. "It is a fragile universe." For the first time, I didn't feel trapped. I felt invited, and that terrified me more than any law ever could. The final council session was scheduled for exactly 1 hour, which everyone understood meant it would last until someone changed their mind. I stood in the center of a room designed to amplify words, surrounded by people who believed words were the most dangerous tools ever invented. I finally agreed with them. She arrived last, as emperors tend to do, and the room recalibrated itself around her presence without asking anyone's opinion. When she looked at me, it wasn't with expectation anymore. It was with curiosity, the same kind she'd had as a child staring at Earth's sky through glass. "You may speak," she said. Once I would have filled that invitation with noise. Now I took a breath. "I made a promise when I didn't understand what promises could become," I said. "I thought that meant it was meaningless. I was wrong. It meant it was unfinished. A ripple moved through the chamber, not approval or dissent, but attention. I can't fulfill it the way it was interpreted, I continued. I can't be a symbol you don't question or a solution you stop thinking about, but I can stand by the future it created, not as a ruler, not as a husband in the way your laws define it, as a witness, a constant, someone who doesn't disappear when things get complicated. Someone laughed quietly. I chose to believe it was supportive. She studied me for a long moment. I felt the old weight of that childhood sentence shift, not vanish but realign. When she spoke, it was without ceremony. "This satisfies the vow," she said. "It always allowed for growth." The legal constructs hesitated, then rewrote themselves. Laws adjusted. Projections stabilized. An empire that had been bracing for rupture exhaled. Later, when the room emptied and the future stopped